Whoo, finally starting the new Element RC Enduro. As you can see, the Gatekeeper. We're starting the kit. So before we get too far into it, things you will need to build the kit. 1.5 to 2.5 mil Allen driver. You're going to probably want something good. A 1/4 inch driver with a good set of MIP bits. EDS Huddy, always a great choice. 5.5 7 mil nut driver. You're going to need a hobby knife and flush cutters. I highly recommend these. They get it nice and close, and they have a really nice flat cut, a little bit better than using side cutters. Shock shaft pliers. You're going to need a body reamer for the body and obviously body scissors. So let's open up parts package number 1. We have our manual all laid out. And in gate number 1, it says you will need bag 1 and 2 to start. So we have bag number 1, which is going to be our chassis frame rails. And bag number 2 is going to be all of our chassis components. And it's also going to be all the hard plastic. And as you can tell, it's still on the parts trees. So this is where the flush cutters are going to be super handy. So let's unpackage this, get it all laid out on the bench. Let's start building. All the parts are cut off. I still go back with a hobby knife though and clean up all of this little flashing. See, there's still a little bit of a nib there, but pretty minor, so we'll just clean that up. I have all the screws pre-organized. I always like to do that. I just built a kit, a B74 one that was missing a couple screws, a couple parts, so it's kind of nice to really make sure that you have everything you need to complete the next steps in the manual. I forgot to mention 2 things. So I forgot to mention the Loctite, and I also forgot to mention grease. So if you watched the first unboxing video, we talked about all this hard plastics. This hard plastics is going to be a drastic amount more fiber infused into the plastic, and it is going to be a lot harder to actually thread those screws in. So the trick is to use a little bit of grease or chapstick, is what I've always used on all my race cars, on the threads of the screw, and then drive it in. So it's a lot easier, and it actually lubricates the threads while it's cutting, as all of these holes, as you can see, not threaded. So when they're not threaded, you got to make your own threads. So a little bit of grease goes a long way. So let's continue on. Gate number 1, step 1 of the first page. Perfect. So we have one side completely done, and now it's time to attach the other frame rail to the other side. But I just want to say like one really big thing about this manual, and this is how most of associated manuals are, and I've just kind of got used to it building so many kits. But the one thing, especially with these crawlers, is keep the same orientation as they say in the book. So you noticed in that last time lapse I kept the orientation of the chassis the exact same, so just like that, the exact same as how the manual was calling for it, just because it is really easy to get things mixed up, especially orientation. Like, first things first, right off the top, you make sure that front and back's the same, especially for putting those screws in for the side guard. That was a big one. The other thing that they do include that is a little bit different is they include a couple things to throw you off a little bit, like this brace. The orientation can really only go one way, because as you can tell, they're not perfectly aligned. But the issue is there's an offset longer and shorter on one side versus the other. And in the manual, it really doesn't say. And going off that picture, I mean, it don't really tell you much. So just make sure to keep an eye on that later on down the build. But yeah, so far so good. Chapstick has been the win here. for threading those screws in. So after that's all done, you're gonna see that there is some of it kind of left over on some of these screws, like that back one there. So what we do is we'll just take some paper towel, some shop towel with some brake clean on it, and clean that up. The other thing that if you are going to use one of these drivers, make sure that they do have a clutch setting. Also make sure to do the last couple threads by hand. You're just going to get started with the driver, finish it off by hand, and it's going to make your life 10,000 times easier, but it's super easy even with these Milwaukees. They do have a clutch, but they are pretty powerful, and they can tend to continue on going too hard. So make sure that you pay attention to that as well. So let's finish up this right side chassis frame rail and yeah, move on to the next step. And just like that, bag number 2 and 1 are done. One thing that you are going to notice is you do have some extra parts and pieces. These are going to be your shock inserts for different orientations on those. But obviously we have no shocks to put in, so that is going to be at a later date. They also do give you a rear bumper and a rear servo winch mount as well, or an extra, I guess. But yeah, there we go. That's number 1. The other thing I do want to mention is these little screws. They are a 1.5 to hold this rear brace on the shock towers. Make sure you do have a good 1.5 millimeter driver, whether that is one of these nice MIPs, a Huddy set, or just something that is ground to fit, not cast to fit. It is going to save your life in long run, getting pinion grub screws, things like that out. So please make sure to have a good tools, not just that one, but tools in general, and also make sure to have a driver to make your life a whole heck of a lot easier. So in the next video, we will go over bag number 3, which is some body mounts and some battery mounts and things like that, but we're getting into electronics. So comment on down below what you think we should put in here for electronics: motor, speed control, servo, and battery. So thank you so much for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. And we'll catch you on the next one. Bye!